Welcome to Wild Contemplations with Kristin and Cori. I am Kristin. I am a 1-3 emotional projector in human design, and my astrology big three are Sag Sun, Libra Moon, Pisces Rising. Cori and I have started this podcast to take a journey around the wheel, speaking to the gene keys that are illuminated by the sun and their programming partner in the earth, and then weaving in aspects of astrology, human design, and our lived experience. So we are so glad that you are here. And Cori, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Kristen. Hello, everyone. I'm Cori. I am a Cancer Sun, Virgo Moon, Virgo Rising, and a 4-6 sacral manifesting generator in human design. And yeah, I'm excited to be here on this journey. Each time we meet, like I'm feeling a bit tired today. I love that you're yawning too, Kristen. But I can already feel like my energy just kind of shifting a bit, just being in this space. So, yeah, I just want to share that. Gratitude for all of you here with us. It's felt that you're here, even though, again, we're listening across space and time. And we're having fun doing this. Um, we always start out with a few breaths here at the beginning, and then we'll be checking in just to see what's been unfolding since our last episode and contemplation. Last week, we were contemplating the sun in 7 and the earth in 13. And today, we will be contemplating the sun in 4 and the earth in 49. And we both have some activations here, so it should be fun. But before we get into all of that, let us ground in the space together. If it feels good to soften your gaze or close your eyes, maybe bring a hand to the body, just grounding and taking 3 breaths all together. Okay. I'll just run over the frequency bands from last week and this week. Um, the sun in 7 last week with the frequency bands of division, guidance, and virtue. And then we had the earth in 13 with the frequency bands of discord, discernment, and empathy. And now this week, we are tuning into Sun in 4 with the frequency bands of intolerance, understanding, and forgiveness, and the Earth in 49 with the frequency bands of reaction, revolution, and rebirth. So we'll just start by seeing what's been going on.
In this moment, reflecting on the last week, I feel like I've been teetering this line of distraction and getting shit done. Like it's less distraction, but I definitely feel it still creeping in, especially as in the last week, it's interesting because last week's keys were we talked a lot about um leadership and the way we choose to show up or maybe we did, I don't know. That could have been another episode, but anyways, like they feel, leadership driven to me. And so, um, it's like I feel like the bigger part of me that's emerging and saying, this is the kind of leader that I want to be. This is who I want to be out in the world, and I'm not willing to let anything stand in the way of that. That part is, contending against the distractions, but it's winning. It's coming out and winning. But I can still feel the distractions kind of creeping in, just as like an old way of, but we, hesitated or maybe held ourselves back a little bit before, weren't fully expressed, right? I mean, a lot of the work that I do in the world is courage to be who you are in the world through your expression, right? And so this is the very thing that I help others navigate. And it's something that I face regularly in different ways too, right? So yeah, it's just a reflection of that, how the old patterns and old identities can kind of creep up and stay on the sidelines and distract you when you're trying to like stay on the path. So that's what I'm kind of feeling right now. How about you?
Yeah, as I shared at the beginning, um, I'm feeling a bit tired today, but also the last few days, I would say. Um, I think I shared in the last episode that we had like company in our home for like the last probably 10 days or so. And um, this week is when I started to feel like, okay, I'm coming to like my limit with it, and just needing to pull back a bit. And yeah, I think I will share a bit. The Earth was moving over my Jupiter, and I had said last week that I would talk a little bit about Jupiter, so I'll maybe take this time to share some here. So in astrology, Jupiter um, is associated with, I think my probably main word that I would use is expansion, because I think it covers like a lot of other things. Um, but that's often, like it's considered the sort of like great benefic, so associated with luck and abundance and um, yeah, our philosophy, like higher learning, kind of the expansion of the mind, expansion through travel, like foreign travel, going to other places, wisdom, just this, yeah, you can think about it, whatever it's kind of touching, it's sort of expanding the horizons. Um, it's interesting in human design, sometimes the the sort of associations are a little bit different. And so in human design, Jupiter is associated with like our inner law. So that thing that's like we kind of like live by. For me, I really see it with the 13 because the 13 is all about listening. It's the gate of the listener. And that's a really big part of like my life and my work and that kind of like yeah, inner law that I do live by. And then in the gene keys, it is part of the pearl sequence. So our natal Jupiter is the actual sphere of the pearl, and our design Jupiter is the sphere of culture. And it's really connected to kind of like the way we come together with others, kind of beyond just relationships. So we were talking last week about how it's really like a social planet. So coming together and like groups and kind of like the way that we share ourselves with the world and those sort of things. Um, Also in astrology, Jupiter rules the signs of Sagittarius and also traditionally the sign of Pisces. Naturally, it kind of is in the ninth house. And so again, we can kind of see those connections as well. But for each of us, again, looking to where it falls in our astrological chart, for instance, mine's in the sixth house. And obviously with the 13, it's in Aquarius. So kind of just like tuning in to our own Jupiterian energy and seeing the kind of like ways in which it might be having conversations in the chart and things like that. Those will all give it flavor as well. But those are kind of like the things I think that are standing out right now that I thought I would share with everyone here. Um, and yeah, I felt it. Again, it's like it expands what it touches. So, I think this week, my capacity for listening to myself and to others and the world around me has certainly like widened and taken on, yeah, a more grounded but expansive direction and perspective, I think. Like I was kind of pushed to out of my comfort zone and to really be present and listen to again what's going on here like so because that's what's filtering what's going on out here and also just being really open when there are people like in the space and yeah, a lot going on. So yeah, that's kind of what's been going on for my week.
Hmm. We also have a new moon and Lionsgate, which is coming to a close tomorrow, I think officially. Um, I spent some time this week in the Lionsgate aspect with I did a ritual where I wrote down eight things that I want to release or that I'm ready to release, and then eight things that I'm ready to call in that scare me.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and then I did like a community group thing on Lionsgate. Um, I am also obsessed with learning right now. So with the expansion aspect, like I'm just going nuts over consuming and learning things. So that's quite interesting. I do tend to go through like waves of it, where I'm very intensely learning and then I have to pull back and take a break. I feel like I'm definitely more on the I'm always learning space versus like I definitely spend a lot more time learning than I do breaking from learning. And yeah, I feel like I'm just thinking a little bit about it, right? Like how do those cycles sort of emerge and flow through me? Some of the stuff I feel like I implement and integrate into my life right away, and some things I think just kind of sit in my aura. Um, the way that I describe as a one line in human design is I believe that we're like sponges of info, so we can very casually like absorb all this information and then put it together and synthesize in a way that makes sense to people. We sort of we take all these pieces and merge them into what becomes our version, if you will, of the way that we share and teach things. And I think it's a very magical part of our gift. And the shadow, of course, is not thinking that we don't know enough to put ourselves out there. And so, yeah, I'm always I think I'm surprised sometimes by the wisdom that comes out of me because it might not be things that I'm actively thinking of, right? But I've just they're just sitting in the in this little library in my head and in my energy and they get to come out when it makes sense. So there's a lot of my point being, I digress here, but there's a lot of energy right now. And I think there's other things going on too, but I'll only bring up the new moon and Lionsgate as part of it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought those things in, and I can already feel the energy of the keys that we'll be contemplating today. So I'll probably just like go into the logistics there. Um, so we have the sun in four, and this is where we'll have the new moon tomorrow. And this new moon also happens to be a solar eclipse. So we will have this in the four with the frequency bands of intolerance, understanding, and forgiveness. In human design, it is the gate of formalization, or sometimes also called the gate of answers. And it lives in the ajna and reaches towards the head. It creates a channel with the 63, that's the channel of logic. So this is certainly like very connected to the way we learn, the way we organize information. Um, and you have your design north node here. You also have this entire channel, the 63-4, the channel of logic. And I have my Mercury here. So, um, yeah, it's very connected to learning and communication and sharing of information, just in general, but also for both of us, pretty highlighted. In the I Ching, it translates to youthful folly, and its programming partner is the 49, where the Earth is right now. It lives in the emotional solar plexus center. It has the frequency bands of reaction, revolution, and rebirth. In human design, it's the gate of principles. And like I said, it lives in the solar plexus, reaches towards the root. And the 19th gene key, you also have this channel. So this is your design south node, and this is the channel of synthesis. This is what kind of flavors your emotional wave. And in the I Ching, it translates to revolution. So these two are very connected to um, the mutation that's happening. Actually, earlier I was going to say this week has kind of felt like a whirlwind, and the 49 in the gene keys is in the ring of the whirlwind. Those like codon groups that we talked about, and it lives there with the 55, which is experiencing the mutation as well. So the 55 is like experiencing the mutation on an individual level in the solar plexus, and the 49 is on a collective level. Um, so there's lots to explore here. Again, this is like, yeah, we're seeing kind of these two awareness centers being activated right now, the ajna and the solar plexus, and they're playing a big role in the kind of shifts and changes that are happening within us and all around us. So it should be fun to explore this today.
Yeah. So, when I look at these frequency bands and even knowing that the Earth, the 49 is my design south node and the 4 is my design north node. So I can see the version of me that lived in a space of reaction. I can still see parts of that, of course, right? But just like younger Kristin, I can see the part of me that wanted to, um, rebel for rebelling, right? I'm not listening to you. I'm not, fuck authority kind of attitude. I'm going to do what I want anyways. And I think there's a lot of pieces that play into that, right? Like I don't believe that you can really ever tell another 1-3 what to do. I believe we have to just experience it ourselves, and it sucks coming from a 1-3 when you learn that wisdom and you're navigating another 1-3 that you want to share that wisdom and they don't want to hear it because they want to navigate it themselves. But I can very much see this, reactive rebel Kristin um, moving into this space of the intolerance and understanding axis, which is interesting to me because I do, in a lot of these episodes, I'll talk about tolerance or intolerance and how I'm feeling on that spectrum. And so I think it's kind of cool that we're contemplating this right now. What I feel from it is that the in the 49, I feel more of a like a lack of connection or understanding within myself that or maybe even how I might say it even is very outside externally influenced. Whereas this 4 to me is more internally influenced, right? So now that I've tuned back into me and I have more of an understanding of who I am, that's when um I experience, I would say more of the intolerance piece to me is more of the resonance that we spoke of before, right? So this is creating so much dissonance in me that I'm not going to tolerate it being there. Um, because it feels so far outside of who I believe that I am, right? And then when you move along that access into like understanding and forgiveness, um, I feel like that's that invitation that we spoke about in the last couple weeks somewhere about what would life look like if we showed up without an identity, like from this true formless state that just allows pure love and acceptance to be, right? To me, that's what that is, right? So this is moving from like, um, how do I want to say this? Moving into a state of compassion, I would say, like this, like the 4 feels very like developing compassion. Um, and the 49 is like the untethering part. Like I'm gonna untether and rip through all the layers of you and all the noise so that you can move into compassion, not just of yourself, but of others. And it was through my journey into myself, right? And it started with therapy, which I've talked about on the podcast here. When everybody was looking at me like, you're crazy, you're in therapy, you must be crazy. And I started seeing and understanding people from a way I never did before. And then I thought, you're crazy for not being in therapy because I think we all need it. This was like 10 plus years ago now, but the world's a little different now. But yeah, it's interesting. That's where I'll stop my reflection for now.
Yeah, as you're sharing, um, and when I tune into the 4, just in general, I feel it in the heart, right? Like it's almost like this balancing, I think, between the head and the heart. So it is like this part of us that is, curious and wanting to learn more and taking in information and organizing information and sharing information. And when we just I speak from my personal experience with this four in my Mercury and my conditioning. I lived a lot of my life like very much in my mind, in my head. Like like if I could just figure it all out, if I could read all the books and take all the courses and, just gain the knowledge that it would all make sense. And I think what I experienced at a certain point was that when I was like out of balance in that way, um, that there was a lot of like intolerance because it was very caught up in like right and wrong, good and bad. It was seeing a vision of how things should be. And then the things that weren't that way, there was a real intolerance around. Um, but in my journey of coming more into greater balance with like my whole being, opening up that kind of closed heart, um, I started to see things in this like different way. And that's kind of like how I understand the understanding is like it moves beyond just the confines of the mind. Like it moves through the whole being. Um, and it really begins with like the openness of the heart. And when I make those shifts, because still like you're saying, there's things happen and we can get kind of swept back up in those old ways of being and patterns sometimes. Um, but like kind of coming back when I find myself floating up there and hanging out there like um in that sort of imbalanced way. When I come back down into the body, into the emotional field, into um, the heart, really, truly, it really feels very Leo. Um, it it shifts everything. There's like this perspective shift, and there is that compassion, right? That like we're we can think differently. We can um, be very different, but at the end of the day, like we're all just trying to figure this thing called life out. We're all human, we're all, um, I think, doing the best we can in the moments, even if we're making mistakes. And yeah, that's kind of what like the forgiveness I think really too is like you were saying, it's starting within, it's starting in ourselves, um, and getting to know ourselves and understand ourselves and hold that compassion for ourselves first and foremost. And then that kind of like spreads out. And I think that that is really the kind of revolution and rebirth is like the shift away from a reactionary way of living that's just very quick, like, uh, you know, very emotionally driven and taking things personal. What I feel with these two as well is like nothing's actually as personal as it feels. Like, I think again, that's just kind of the way that we interpret things, but like a lot of everything is kind of impersonal, I think. Um, it's just our own like lens that we're looking through, and sometimes things can feel super like directed and personal when they hit those emotional like soft spots. But um, I think that understanding and that open-heartedness takes us to a different place where there's space and it's not like that quick reaction and it's not taken so personally. It's kind of seen as more like just, yeah, collective or something. I think that's what's coming through most for me right now.
Yeah, I was just looking at the 49. So it sits in the solar plexus. I'm thinking about what I'm contemplating right now is what what is happening or what are the circumstances in which I react versus the circumstances in which I seem to be able to receive something I probably would have reacted to with just a grounded state, from just a grounded state. And I'm not sure the answer to that question right now. Um, but the other thing that I'm thinking about is as we're talking about this is where where do I where have I navigated like healing for myself and still hold an intolerance space of that in others? Because it's not true that just because I've healed it or come to that space of understanding of an energy within myself or an emotion or a trigger within myself, yes, it can help me understand and see that differently in others. But the forgiveness is not a given. The Right, and maybe that means that in those cases, maybe I haven't forgave myself. Maybe I've come to the understanding, but I haven't forgiven myself, right? But and the intolerance of the other in that same state maybe is the mirror back to me that I haven't forgiven myself. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of talking out loud about it. Um, but it's something that I notice. I'm not just because I've become aware of something in myself, it doesn't always in every circumstance give me that compassion for others. Um, it's almost like my intolerance becomes worse, if you will, because I'm aware. Now I'm aware of it and I can see it, and now I'm even more intolerant of it. And again, maybe that is the mirror getting louder. And like this is like ready to finalize, to heal, to release, like let it like complete the circle, complete the path. So it's interesting. Do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, a few things are coming up. One, I think that both of these keys are really tied to like our relationships as we're, like the the mirroring that the other offers us. And Richard actually talks about this in one of these, I feel. He talks about how when we do start to bring awareness to these things, that they actually start to feel, it feels more intense because like we're looking at it now. We're like being, um, conscious of what's going on, and it can feel like a lot. And it can feel like stuff keeps coming up, um and I think it's just the part of the process of like the clearing. Um I forget what the word is that he uses for this, but the 49 he talks about, it is kind of like this, I think he calls it like an ethical cleansing or something like that. But it's like, it's that part of the process where it's, the stuff comes more to the surface and it feels, um, yeah, a bit more, um, activating, I think. And even like as we clear things, like the bigger things, maybe there's still like the subtle things that continue to come up. And it's like layers. You're kind of like um, peeling back the layers. And I think as you peel back the layers, it's almost like each one is kind of like opening up a sensitive spot. Because this 19 that it connects with is um, that kind of energy of sensitivity. Um, and yeah, I think it just, there is a vulnerability to it too. Um, and I really like what you bring up around, when we are feeling that intolerance. Yeah, this feeling of like, okay, I've done some healing around this. Maybe there's this expectation that other people should be doing that or have done that as well. And when there's not, that's expectation is not met, there can be this reaction that is very like, well, I don't have time for that, or, that's not mine. I've already dealt with that sort of energy. At least I'm just thinking in my own, again, experience. Um, and I think as you kind of highlighted that, yeah, there's probably a part of ourselves that we haven't fully forgiven or like just allowed, again, that like humanness to be held with lightness, and to know like, again, we've talked quite a bit about time not really being linear. Like, I think this ties in with that because the mind wants it to happen on a certain timeline. Um, but if time isn't really linear, then like we can't be too attached to when things are happening, both with ourselves and with others, because again, like there's uh there's layers to that I think the mind just has a bit difficulty understanding. And that's maybe bringing it again more into the fullness of our being and kind of holding space for those processes to take place in their own right timing.
When you when you brought up the intolerance around I've already healed that or that's not mine, but another person is acting from a space that's maybe unaware or not as aware or whatever. Um, I for sure I've experienced this, and I feel like that intolerance is less of a space of, it's not that I haven't forgiven myself, because that's where I was going with it before, but that to me feels like a rejection of the old identity. That's what that feels like. And so if we're rejecting the old identity, maybe still forgiveness is being asked of there. right? If we're not um in that space of neutrality, right? Like able to just hold the difference. Um, so that's just another layer of it that I felt when you expressed that. Um, where do I want to go now? Also, I wrote down when you were talking greater awareness. With greater awareness comes more intense feelings. And I think that's very interesting as well because this to me is this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we're given these outs, these spaces that would be easy to step away and right, even the intolerance of other people not building the awareness or learning the things about themselves like you're doing. It can be easy to say, well, if like I'm not going to be the only one who's responsible all the time. Like, why do I have to? This happened a lot for me growing up, right? Why do I have to be the bigger person, quote unquote, the bigger person? Um, yeah, that's it's interesting. Like this is I had something like this happen in corporate, and I was very upset about this very thing, right? This I've built up all this awareness and I just felt like um nobody on the leadership team that I was around was really exhibiting any of that, and it was very frustrating to me. Um and one of my friends like came over and I was talking to her about it, and she said to me, you don't get to be mad about it. Like you chose this path. You chose this path of building awareness. So you don't get to be mad when other people aren't aware. And there were other words, is like I'm paraphrasing here, but like you don't get to be mad about that. And like I said, I think it is an easy out. It's an easy space. I was just talking to um my aunt about this the other day. Like that is because she's very much on like new, I would say like newly on her journey over the last like couple of years. And she's experiencing a lot of the separation, the aloneness, the um what do you like what do you mean you don't understand what I'm doing? Like what don't you want to understand and accept and love me because it's me? Even though you might not understand. She's experiencing that more of that separation. And I said to her, unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to look at that, when you choose this journey, that you do face a lot of that, a lot of the misunderstanding, a lot of we're not on the same timelines anymore. And you get to choose then, am I going to stay where I have been and compromise and maybe sacrifice myself to be in this space, or am I going to move forward? Am I going to choose the journey over any discomfort that I feel, any separation that I feel, any aloneness that I feel? And for me, I've come to that space of I'm always going to choose the journey. It, it, it's created this undying commitment to me. And maybe a part of that was always there, right? If I look back, just how much I kicked and screamed to like, no, this is not right. No, this is not the path. No, this is not for me. Right. I think there was always an aspect of that there. And maybe that's just been a big part of my journey. But now I'm very much like, I'm committed to this journey, even if it ends up means that I end up solo, that I end up alone, that I end up separated from my family, my bloodline. That's how committed I am to this now. And yeah, and in the beginning, and I think a lot of people listening can probably relate to this, but in the beginning, when you start that journey, there is a lot of, I don't know if I want to call it dissonance, but I want to use a different word, but dissonance is the only word that's sort of coming through right now. But these experiences that are thrown in front of you that you question, makes you question the journey. Am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? I'm losing the people I care about. The people I care about don't understand me. I'm losing friendships that I've had for many, many years. Things are changing. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? It's normal to question all that. So if you're in that space, like please know that it's there. It's valid. I promise you there's another side. Like there's a point that you reach that is like the point of no return. And again, it doesn't mean that you're going to be alone and separate and all the things, but it means that you've chosen, what I really wanted to say was a higher path. But I don't want that to sound like you've chosen a better path than someone else. But you've chosen a path that becomes greater than you, even though other people on the outside might look at you as being solely focused on you. It's really that it's greater. My path is bigger than me. And I'm committed to aligning with that and serving in that way to complete my fucking mission. That's what I'm here for. This took a turn I was not expecting, but
Love it.
there you go. And I'm yawning a lot in this episode. So, like, we must be clearing some shit.
I know, right? It feels like it. Yeah. I just keep thinking um, of this. I was on this trip, I was traveling, and like we kind of I went for one thing and then realized that it wasn't really aligned. It was like a conference sort of thing. And so we kind of pivoted and found ourselves like hiking a mountain in like ballet flats and conference clothes, you know? And I felt called, like, yeah, I felt called to walk over to this spring. Um, and I found this note written on like a piece of bark, like someone had left it there with, the rocks arranged. And it said, "Everything will be reborn." And in that moment, like I was kind of at this place where I was like right on the edge of, a big change and choosing myself and my path, and listening inwardly. And like receiving that message just felt like huge in that moment. And I think about it often, like this, everything will be reborn. Um, Especially on a path that there's a lot of transformation happening, like a lot of death, uh, a lot of releasing and a lot of letting go. And just like you were sharing, it just feels like that message that like to keep trusting in yourself and in that path, and that like what I really see is that things like shift and change and will be so different that like the fears and worries of being alone or being separate, like they're just not even possible. It on the other side of that, there's just something that is beyond. And again, because of our connection, like, this 49 and 4 both, they really speak to, again, our unity and our oneness. Um, and the more that we like kind of surrender to our inner calls, our heart's wisdom and knowing, like we merge with that oneness, but at the same time, like we don't lose our individuality. I think he even talks about this with the 49. Um, it becomes actually like probably more defined. Um, but maybe like our attachment to it, like you were saying, it's not about just us, me, a single thing. It's about something much bigger. And yeah, it's it's expansive and it's heart opening. But it doesn't mean that it isn't challenging. Um, and I think it brings us to different places too. Like, yeah, it's the path kind of reveals itself as we move along it. So like we're always being invited into something different. Like it's not always going to look the same. Um, yeah, I'll stop there for a second.
The note said everything will be reborn.
Hmm.
Yeah. I, this message to me is an invitation of, okay, if I know that, how long am I going to sit and resist the change, resist the calling to more, resist whatever the fuck is in me that is trying to get my attention and say, this needs to go, this needs to be released, this is asking to shift. I want you to see this from this perspective. Open your eyes, see this path, see this opportunity. Right? If we know that it's inevitable, then would we be so resistant of change? Right? Would we? I also think about this like a lot of people in the spiritual realm will talk about the dark night of the soul, this concept, the dark night of the soul. And even ego death, I would put that in the same sort of category that I'm going to talk about here. These are, I mean, I my my opinion is that these are just fancy, I don't know, fancy words. They almost feel like trophies in a way. Like not that these people want like a pat on the back. You just went through an ego death or a dark night of the soul. Like not that they're necessarily looking for that, but I do feel like in some ways that there's some level of validation being asked for or recognition maybe. Validation is maybe not the right word, but recognition. I feel like all of life is about death and rebirth, the whole process. So how can we say like how can we say I had an ego death. I went through my dark night of the soul for the last 8 months. Like how can we speak to it like it's a fucking pinnacle that we've reached? This is obviously something I'm opinionated about. So I always say suck out the juice and spit out the pits, you know? Um, and if you guys disagree with me, I love to invite that in. Like, please tell me your perspective so that we can explore it more because I think it only makes the conversation more fun. But back to my point here. So if we know that rebirth is just a part of the process, would we, how much more would we release? When I observe my past, if I wrote down like my life story, for example, and I've done this like a few times going through like different extra journaling prompts and stuff like that, I'll notice these like pivotal catalytic moments in my life, right? Where like everything shifts. And it used to be like, you know, oh, here like 5 years went by and here's a moment. And now 2 years went by and here's a moment. And now a year went by. What I found in my experience is that those moments you just keep collapsing time, if you will, in your tolerance for allowing that to happen, right? Recognizing, building the awareness that this moment, this catalyst is here. I'm standing at the threshold. What am I going to choose? Am I going to stay on in my fucking safety zone? Or am I going to step over and take a risk, if you will? I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I'm at the call. I'm being called to it right now. I'm at the door. The door is open for me. I can see the other side. Am I going to choose to step over it? Right. So then to me, like the journey almost becomes like, how quickly can we, not that it's like a competition or a game or like, how fast can I move through this? Right. Some thresholds are going to take longer than others. And it doesn't mean that just because I've noticed this overarching pattern of like once I accept the threshold, like they're coming faster and faster, and then I just get to go through that death rebirth cycle faster and faster in my life. It doesn't mean that at some point now I'm not going to hit one that takes 8 months. You know, when I feel like my life changes so much sometimes week to week, day to day even that it's funny because when I'm moving through things with friends, like I have some friends that we voice memo each other to kind of stay in, instead of trying to find like times to connect, we'll voice memo each other like long ass voice notes and kind of catch up on things. But sometimes we're having these like deep conversations and contemplating things. And you know, like let's say I'm struggling with something. And sometimes like because I give myself the space to, you know, tune into my messages when I have the capacity to do so. So just because somebody sends me a message doesn't mean I'm gonna respond right away. Like I have messages on my phone that are like probably a year old that I haven't responded to. Um, But my point is that sometimes by the time I decide I have the capacity, I've moved through that. And that could be a day, it could be an hour, it could be, you know, it's interesting. Um, but anyways, I guess I'm down a rabbit hole here, but to come back out a little bit, um, I believe that everything is reborn, that message. I think that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Is really an invitation for us, where are we holding on to old identities that are asking for a refresh or asking for a rebirth, are asking for us to release an old paradigm, an old version. It's interesting. This is bringing something up for me that I'll share. It's a little maybe off topic, maybe not. I don't know. But I was one of my friends that we do voice notes from. This came up in our conversation today. We were talking about being a part of the Catholic Church in our upraising and how, like, I was baptized, accepted communion. I don't know when I accepted communion. I was baptized as a baby, like, accepted communion whenever that was. And wherever we lived in Florida at the time, I was confirmed in like second or third grade. And this is something that a lot of, like, normally in the Catholic religion, you don't move through confirmation until you can decide as a developed adult, if you will. Like, I've developed who I am and my opinions, and I think that's when you should choose to get confirmed, right? Or even adults who are transitioning or moving to another religion or moving to the Catholic religion will get confirmed at an older age, right? And I was saying to her that I don't feel like just because those things happened, I don't feel like I have to like that I have a brand stamped on me, right? That I can't move out of now. This happened when I was in second grade, so like I can't, like, I guess I'm Catholic, right? I don't believe that. And as I said that to her in this voice note, I said to her, but interesting, what came up as I said it is like, should I go through some sort of ritual? Like, is that imprinted in me somewhere? Like, should I go through some level of ritual that lets go of um, that energy, right? I thought, and I don't know the answer to it, but it's something that's coming up for me right now, right? Everything is reborn. So in that, I believe it is our duty, our responsibility to look at dismantling from all the things that have created some level of, like I said, branding or identity or imprint in us. I don't know, just off topic, on topic sort of contemplation I'll throw in there.
I'm going to say it's all connected.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love this contemplation. I also grew up Catholic. I don't know if I've ever said that on here before. Um, in my school, it's like you did your confirmation at like seventh grade. So you're what, 12? Or I think I was 12 years old. Like, it's not like, yeah, it's kind of interesting because still you're not, even though you're a little bit older, like, you're not really in a position to make that decision um, free of any, you know, influence, especially
Mhm.
when you're like going to a school that your parents are paying for and, all of that kind of stuff, or it's expected of you. I still remember like my parents made us go to church on the weekends and it was like, it was like something we had to do.
Yeah. I
Um,
always say I was forced Catholic
yeah,
instead
it's
of
kind of
raised
wild.
Catholic.
It's wild, right? So I think I was in my 20s, my mid, early to mid 20s when I announced that, or renounced, I suppose, that religion, like clearly, like I am not Catholic. But I never did a ritual around it. And I think that would be interesting. Maybe it's something we could
Mm.
actually explore doing. Um, yeah, because I like it. It's kind of like, there's, I am of the mindset, like I just, like organized religion in general, I don't really um, align with, but I align with different like avatars or individuals
Mhm.
or deities from different religions. So like I have Mother Mary, um, close by in different places. I'm sitting right next to Ganesh. Like, so I kind of like,
Mhm.
connect more with the energies of um, beings. And again, not seeing them as like really separate from myself, but like a part of that oneness and whole, and that like kind of taking away the programming or like conditioning that I received around like this is what this is. This means this. This means that. Like, what does it mean to me? That's kind of how I feel with these systems too. Like, you know, um, developing our sort of own relationship with it. I have a book sitting on my bedside table too. It's like it's fiction, but it's written from the perspective of Mary Magdalene. Um, And like I think stuff like that is really interesting and cool to explore. We've talked about it a little bit, but just like how the voice of the feminine from certainly the Abrahamic religions has been kind of erased um, or suppressed, um, and creating space for that to reemerge within myself. So I think it's entirely connected to these keys again, because like to me, I think a lot of times organized religions can carry a lot of intolerance um, for like things outside of the set beliefs. Um, and then it becomes productive to like the very thing that you're practicing. If you get to like the root of it, I've always felt that like if you look at most religions and you kind of like get to the core message, that they actually are very similar. But it's when you like layer on all of the other kind of separation, really, right? Like the dilution of it. The distortion, I guess is the best word maybe to describe. Distortion of it, um, is when it becomes like divisive and it closes the heart, which
Mhm.
again, I think these keys invite us to kind of open that back up.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a huge, huge topic. And if you guys are excited about it, please like tell us and we can talk about it more. Um, yeah, I was gonna say something else, but I think I'm gonna pause and just let the conversation marinate, um, in all of us, because that's a big rabbit hole. But I have so much to say. So if you guys are excited about this, please tell us. Tell us. Not that, um, like I get that it's certainly a topic that people have opinions about. Um, and yeah, I think it's fun to unravel the systems and to question and say, does this feel true to who I am? And if it doesn't, then what wants to emerge? What wants to birth through me? And I think it gets to be a rebirth because it often is this remembrance of, oh yeah, like I've just been colored with this mask my whole life. And I'm realizing that it's not in resonance with my energy. And so I get to release that and then reveal another true aspect of who I am. So, with that being said, Cori, do you have anything else on your heart that you'd like to express?
Hmm. I think I'm feeling good. Yeah, just again, we'll have this eclipse tomorrow, and just keeping in mind that it's in the four. So, eclipses can kind of shift things for us. They really kind of bring things to the surface that are maybe asking for our attention, for us to listen, to come into deeper conversation and communication with ourselves. And so, like Kristin said, just being kind of open to seeing what's coming through. And, um, we can kind of look at what's coming up and saying, is this like how I feel, what I think, what I believe, or is this something that was given to me in whatever way that I'm still holding on to, but that can be let go of? That's going to be my kind of contemplation. So I thought I would just sort of throw that out there, and just remembering to like hold ourselves with that softness and compassion and open heart. Again, like we might notice that with these keys that emotions can be kind of elevated, or um, yeah, can feel sometimes a little more intense. But just holding our hearts and the hearts of others in space for what wants to like unfold and emerge from it all.
Mhm. Mhm. All right, friends. Thank you for being here, for listening. Couple quick notes. Cori, I think, is going to join me. I'm going to join this book club community to do the artist's way, to read the artist's way. It just keeps coming in my sphere of energy, and I think it's time. It's time to go on that journey. So it's a really relaxed, like one chapter a week kind of journey that starts on August 24th, I believe. It's my sister's birthday. Um, yeah, so if you're interested in joining that, it's not our community. It's led by someone else, but we can share that info if you feel called to be a part of that. And then Cori and I also host this space called the Weavers, which is for healers, journeyers, seekers, just people who want to be on this conscious journey. If you're here listening to this, you're probably a good fit for that space. But we're talking about the next one, which is going to be in October or November. We haven't confirmed a date yet. But if that speaks to you too, let us know, and we can send you an invite to the next one. All right, lots of love for being here with us along on this journey, and for your shares and comments and just energy and co-creating the space with us. So we'll see you soon.